everybody, this is Daniel, the Daniel Trotman Show. Welcome back. It's good to see you, or to be seen by you. You know what I mean. So I want to talk about a couple stories that are in the news, but before I do, I want to just mention briefly what we're doing here and how we do it. So here we're talking about news and politics from a reasonable perspective, an intelligent perspective. I give you the facts. I give you my opinions. I do not pretend to have all the answers. I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I correct myself. But I do it this way because I like to talk, and I think it's important that we talk about the issues. There's too many things we don't talk about. We don't talk about politics well enough. We don't like to talk about religion and sex and all these things, and then we wonder why we have these issues. We need to be talking about these things and do it intelligently and reasonably. Okay, and the only way I learn is if I talk, if I share my thoughts, and then reasonable, intelligent people can correct me or give me new information, and then I can amend my thoughts. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do here. I'm not talking because I think I know everything. I'm talking because I know that I don't know everything, and having these conversations with you helps me learn more. So we've got that out of the way. You know where I'm coming from. I want to talk about two stories in the news today. First one is George Bush on his press tour. Second one is the HBCU leaders who met with Donald Trump and their kind of feelings after their meeting. So with George Bush, he's been doing a press tour this week for a book that he's coming out with. It's called Portraits of Courage, where he's done paintings of veterans, which now the ideas of that is actually pretty cool, like feelings of Trump, of Bush aside. And I gotta be honest, he's a decent painter. I'm just being fair. I'm going to include a link so you can see some of those paintings. It's not a link to purchase because I'm not doing that, so don't worry about it. But with that being said, he met on Jimmy Kimmel, he met on Ellen, and some of the reporting on this was like, oh, you know, he's not such a bad guy. You may get to like him again. And so with the reporting of that, it made me think about what happened with the parka, him losing that battle with the parka at the Trump inauguration. And it made me think of the way he looks at Michelle Obama, and, you know, the way people are talking about their friendship, and the way people are covering him. It's like they're covering him in this really soft, fuzzy way, like, oh, he's like the grandpa that's kind of goofy. And it's like, okay, well, I just want to remind y'all that he's a war criminal. This is the man who started the unjustified war in Iraq that led to the deaths of our military service members who should not have been fighting that in the first place. It led to the deaths, depending on what estimates you look at, of hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians. It destabilized the region. It allowed for the conditions that led to ISIS and radical Islamic terrorism to flourish. So when people talk about Bush and they try to act as though Trump bad equals Bush good, it doesn't. We should not be wiping away the atrocities that happened under George Bush, where he sanctioned illegal torture. They had CIA black sites. This is the same administration that pushed surveillance and the Patriot Act to where you and I have concerns of being spied on, where we have to use apps to make sure that secret communications aren't seen. Like, all this exists. We live in a surveillance state in large part because of what happened under George Bush. And I am not going to ignore it or pretend like it didn't happen just because people don't like Trump. I saw the same thing happen this past week when Trump addressed a joint session of Congress. And people looked at Trump and said, oh, for the first time, he didn't act like an insolent child. So he's acting presidential. Why don't you talk to the people who are green card holders who were here in the United States legally and then weren't able to come back to the United States, or people who are now having to undergo religious tests when they're at the airports and being asked, are you Muslim, which is what happened to Muhammad Ali's son this a couple weeks ago, or has been reported in the news this past week. So we have this short-term memory where just because something goes well and we start feeling safe again, quote unquote, we ignore these larger problems if they're not happening to us. That is ignorant. And this also goes to the mainstream media because they're doing it too. It's not acceptable. Just because Bush isn't acting right now as bad as Trump, just because Bush is criticizing Trump and supporting the press, that does not mean that we absolve him of the problems of his legacy. Like, we don't absolve him just because he's not as bad as Trump, okay? So I just had to throw that out there. If you know somebody who's trying to turn and seem like Bush wasn't that bad, you need to send them this video so they can get their mind right. So, next story I want to cover, number 2, is the HBCU leaders who met with Donald Trump this past week. Now, HBCU leaders met with Donald Trump, and if you don't know, HBCU is a historically black college or university, ones that were started because black people could not get in to predominantly white institutions, something that Betsy DeVos, the head of the Department of Education, obviously didn't know. So, when it comes to this past week, they met, and HBCU leaders wanted to see support from Trump because he promised he was going to do more for HBCUs than any other president before him. And so, Donald Trump signed an executive order which kind of shifted oversight of HBCUs from the Department of Education to under the White House, under the executive branch. Now, at the time, HBCU leaders all stood together. They took pictures with Trump, which he loves to do. He loves to take pictures with minorities and use that to say, see, I can't be racist because here's my black friend or my black friends. That's a tiger. It's not a black person, but you know what I mean. So he takes the picture. Kellyanne Conway is sitting on the couch with her feet on the couch, which just enraged America, which I thought was hilarious. By the way, the meme with Dave Chappelle as Rick James, where he's like trying to kick her off the couch and they crop that in, brilliant. So with that meeting and the executive order that was done, there were some HBCU leaders like the president of Morehouse who later on said that they feel like they were duped. And my response to that is, duh. You're gonna feel that way with Donald Trump because he's a con artist. However, to be fair, you gotta wait to see what happens when he issues his budget or when he talks about the budget. Because until then, it's very possible he might keep his word. The thing that we're seeing with Trump 40 days in is that sometimes he does keep his word, although I still think he's a liar and a con artist, and sometimes he doesn't. So he kept his word about immigration. He's been pushing that hard. He's kept his word when it comes to deregulation, which I don't think is good, but at least he said he was going to do it and he's trying to do it. He kept his word on TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership. So there's some things that he's going to actually do that he said he was going to do. So to be fair to him, we do have to wait to see what happens. But I don't hold my breath. I am skeptical of the Trump administration because he's shown himself to be clearly a man who's interested in himself, who has significant conflicts of interest, which I think are unethical and unbecoming of the office of the president, which nobody's talking about because he attacks the media every day and distracts people. And now, most recently, the day that I'm recording this, he says that President Obama wiretapped Trump Tower in October before the election, and he's now saying it's McCarthyism and Nixon's work and Donald Trump. So I want to talk about those stories because I think they're important. I think they matter. And I'd like to hear from you. Because now this is the part of the conversation where we get to hear your thoughts and hear what you have to say. So tell me what you think. What do you think about George Bush being in the news recently? Do you think that he gets a bad rap? Do you think we should be a little lighter on him? What do you think about the HBCUs meeting with Donald Trump? Especially if you went to a HBCU. What are your thoughts? But leave your thoughts in the comments. I'll respond to them. I'd love to hear what you have to say. This has been Daniel with the Daniel Troutman Show, and I will see you next time.